Not that I noticed from what I'm hearing.
Okay, because for some reason my mic was working before, but now it's not. And I think none of these because it says it's on, but it's not when we use it.
It's so weird how that, like... And last time it was me having the problem and you were fine, right?
Yeah. And without rebooting the computer, we're just going to go with my AirPods.
So you don't have a big phallic microphone in front of your face. That's not fair. I object.
Well, I can keep it there just so you don't feel out of place. How's that?
Thank you. I don't want to be the only phallic asshole. No, I'm just going to end it before I go any further.
Party on, Todd.
Party on, Sal.
Rock on.
Rock on.
Well, welcome back, POJCasters, to another episode of the Party on John Cast, a podcast of two Johns. We talk about theology, music, whatever we're drinking, usually coffee, or sometimes other stuff, and just various topics, most righteous topics. I'm Reverend Sal and the teaching elder in the Presbyterian Church USA in the validated ministry of hospice chaplaincy.
And I am the Rockin' Reverend Todd Laddick, who is an ordained elder in the United Methodist Church of Greater New Jersey, serving a congregation in Newton, New Jersey. Which is occasionally now on higher ground from Sal, though Sal now definitely has a more Calvinistic beard.
I do. Sometimes I give him the higher ground, but I don't try not to. Yeah. But I do. I am. I'm even getting it a little bushy.
It is. I think. Yeah, you're making up for it.
Yeah, making up for it.
Oh my goodness.
Since Todd has since shaved his beard.
Yeah. I decided that as manly and awesome of a beard as that was, having it sheathed behind a face mask while walking through Disney in June, the end of June, seemed like maybe not a wise idea. I don't know. And then, of course, I made the decision, went with it, shaved, had a blotchy vampire blood face for, half a week. And within that half a week, I got the news that Disney lifted masks outside and you don't necessarily need to wear them. I could be worse.
I'm sure your face will thank you in the nice Florida June weather.
I'm sure it will. Yes. I was wondering how I was going to apply sunscreen, which I need, and I'm not going to let my bearded face fool me. But where do you apply it down there, and how do you with hair that's like longer than your head, so anyway, it was an interesting shave. It took me longer to shave it than I thought it would. had to go in parts.
But you did have the more John Calvin-esque reformed beard, so
yes, I was impressed with the beard I had going, so
yep.
Oh well. Anyway,
well.
I think we introduced ourselves.
We did. We got into beards somehow. Because you occasionally are on higher ground in
yes,
Calvinist beard.
Yeah, there we are. So that brings us to our Hebrew segment.
Hebrews. Hey, Todd, how do you know that God loves coffee?
How, Sal?
He wrote about it in the book of Hebrews.
Ba-dum. Oh, Sal, how do you
Yes,
know
Todd.
that God also loves a good cup of tea?
How, Todd?
Well, as it turns out, he brews it as well. Okay. So who's going? Which of us crazy guys is going first?
I'll go first because I've almost finished it in the time it took us to talk about how God likes his coffee. And our beards.
Okay.
So I'll go first because I'm almost done with it. It's just Tim Hortons coffee, and it's actually decaf.
Oh, decaf. Anyway.
Yeah. So go with coffee for this episode. Yeah, and I actually been trying to drink decaf just to be a little bit healthier. So
yeah,
I still drink 1 cup of coffee a day, but decaf, especially when we're recording this, is better.
So you're saying you don't like to stay up all night then?
I don't.
That's fair enough.
Not good for my blood pressure.
Fair enough. I was gonna say, like, look, I'm just trying to manage my caffeine. I'm trying to live healthy. I'm trying to do the right thing, and you just kick a brother down. you just kick him down in his pain. You know what? The funny thing is, you'll get the last laugh because I am not drinking decaf at all. And you'll be like in La La Land, sleeping away, enjoying the night's sleep while I'm up like going, I don't know why did I do this. So you'll get the last laugh. It's all good.
I'm sure.
So you're drinking Tim Hortons decaf.
Decaf.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess that brings me to what I'm drinking. It's going to be very hard to read, but this is so it's Plum Deluxe, which is a tea company that has regular like tea, but then it also has blends and stuff like Teavana did. Though their prices are better. I have yet to drink them, so I don't know that the quality is better, but the prices were better. And so this one is Red Velvet Peurh Dessert Tea, and I don't know how you pronounce that, but it's Peurh. Peurh. Red Velvet Peurh. Or Peurh. Red Velvet Peurh Dessert Tea. I don't know. I'm butchering it either way, I'm sure. But Peurh, if that's how it's pronounced, is a type of tea. So it has Peurh tea, cocoa peel, cocoa nib, beetroot pieces, blackberry leaves, chocolate essence, love, gratitude, has caffeine, steeping instructions. Mine has been steeping for more than enough time. So here it is. Plum Deluxe tea, Red Velvet Peurh Dessert tea. And I will tell you right now there it is, Sal. I'm drinking it in a nice little traditional teacup. Little. Oh, wow. No, that literally tastes like red velvet cake.
So you weren't kidding.
Yeah, it's wow. What a beautiful thing. Okay, so that's what I'm drinking. As you can see, Sal, I'm not in short supply.
Right. I do like that teapot.
You do like it, right? It's a cool teapot.
Cool teapot.
Yep. So, all right. Well, that is our He Brews segment on both sides of the brewing aisle. The hot brewing aisle, anyway. Okay. So anyway, yeah.
I think that brings us to our main topic.
It does, and before we get into the topic itself, those of you who are listening, this is in May. Oh my goodness, we're almost to Memorial Day. This is the date's May 27th. We're gonna date this. So May 27th, we are recording over some good tea and some conversation, and basically, we're going to talk, and when we're done talking, we're going to split this puppy in half. Oh, that sounds really bad. The poor dog. Why the dog? Why the
dog?
Not
advocating. No. Why did you go there?
Oh,
we are not. We are not advocating the harming of animals.
No. Oh, we're. I was meaning by dog, of course, the ancient Mesopotamian language of that says dog in the sense of long dog-like looking worm that gets up into you, eats your stuff, and you die. That's the thing that we're splitting into. That dog.
Yeah. That's the.
Okay.
What are those? What are those dogs at the end of Ghostbusters?
Yeah, they were at the end of one or the beginning of another. I'm sure. Oh boy. Okay. So anyway, needless to say, this is going to span over a couple episodes. This is the first part that you're hearing right now, which is obviously for the month of June. Hello, June. We're almost here. And then the second part will be in July. So just be mindful of that. But this is a conversation worth hearing, and you're going to get to hear it. So stick with us. So let's get into it. Can you believe, Sal, that we're going to be talking about race?
I feel like we've already talked about this. Didn't we solve this issue?
Did we solve it already?
Well, some would say we solved it.
Let me think on this. Oh, my thinking eyes. Oh, my thinking eyes are burning. Okay. It's cause you imagine what I was like as a kindergartner? Okay, so race. Obviously, racism is never. It's not ending. Just because like there was justice for George Floyd's family doesn't mean there's justice overall. Like justice would be George Floyd not having to be dead. His family not having to wrongly grieve. So we've talked about this before. All crazy jokes and laughter aside, this isn't a laughing matter. This is a serious thing that is plaguing our country, and we need to continue to talk about it.
It's important to have a conversation because it's not something that we learned about in school, because when they signed the Civil Rights Act in '64 or whatever. Well, that's when racism ended, or 1970 after Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X were killed. Oh, then it was over after that. No, it still is a present day thing. I think it's a lot easily hidden nowadays, but
yeah,
it's there.
Yeah, and I feel that since 2015, I don't know, whenever the orange
2016.
Ever since the orange Gumby came down the escalator at the Trump Tower, and announced, you like that, the orange Gumby, that works, right?
In his golden palace.
In his golden palace. Whenever he came down his golden escalator to announce that he was running to save us from rapists and drug dealers, presumably coming from Canada, of course, because he was talking about up there, right?
Of course.
No. There's no drug dealers. Yeah. There's no rapists in Canada. No. only in the South. No. Only in the South. They all come up from the South.
Only in the South. Yeah.
So
Canada is sending their best, but Mexico, they're not sending their best people.
No, not their best.
Direct quote.
Maybe a few are okay. A few may be okay.
So it's an issue that's really resurfaced since then.
It has, and since 2016 or 15, whenever that time was, it's gotten. I feel it's gotten more and more hard to hide. Like I feel like even with Barack Obama as President Obama, you saw he had challenges that he had to surmount that you knew nobody else would have to. It was because he was black. But there was still that feeling like we have our first black president. We're moving forward. Racism is behind us. It's going to get better. And then the second that President Obama steps out of the office, it's like we didn't just go back 5 years. We didn't just go back 8 years or 10 years or 15 years. We're going back 50. Whoa! And it's like, yeah. And so that's, that to me, like it has gotten worse and worse and worse and worse to the point where now, if you're a racist, you don't have a problem coming out and saying I'm a racist. You say, well, yeah, you say I'm a racist, but I don't think I'm a racist. I'm not a racist. What I believe is the American way. It's what all good Americans believe. You're the racist. That's how the conversation goes.
And then the racist as part of that defense.
Yeah. And I say that with my pinky up.
So I think we can tell is by the last couple episodes we've touched on TV shows about it, some of the history of that. But it's not going to end, even if in 2 months or so we go back to different topics. It's not going to. That doesn't mean the problem has gone away. So it's important to talk about and kind of show how the church can handle it. I think we've kind of messed that one up, I think, because we were a big part of the history and being complacent in the history.
Yeah, I think the church has, it has played its nasty role, so to speak. It's also done some good things too, and like the history of the church is literally almost 2,000 years old, and in that long history, there's a lot of good that's been done, and then there are the shady periods as well, and sometimes they coexist. But the shady periods that we see ourselves existing in right now is certainly scary, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, needless to say, racism is just something that needs to be addressed. The way the things just keep getting crazier and crazier. We need people of sound mind and sound heart to be willing to discuss this topic, and not just be like we have in the past, like I was sharing, like thinking, well, we've, Barack Obama has been president. We're moving forward. We're finally taking that next step. And it's like, well, for the very one step that we took, the giant one step that we took forward, we took a giant, 50 steps backwards. So don't mind my dog. You'll hear her sharing her opinion. She's a dog of color, and she's letting us know that it's not easy. Not easy.
No.
You're constantly being dissed. You're being talked to like, you're a little cutie baby. Yes, you are. How did we get there? It just takes a dog barking. Anyway.
There's a dog barking.
Yeah. So, well, I say we break this up into a couple pieces. I think we can talk about how there are forces in play right now as we speak, wanting to push us back in terms of our education, in terms of our historical knowledge, in terms of our scientific knowledge, in terms of our medical benefits, in terms of our voting rights. There are, and all of this is being done not for the good of the whole. This is being done in order to keep the few that are in power, and keep everybody else in their prospective places. I mean, am I wrong?
I think, and this is not to say, because Todd, you and I are men who are of a certain color, who can live our lives and not worry about, am I going to be shot,
right,
or for a simple traffic stop. It's not to say because we know and we're better because we're clergy and we're telling you this and you have to listen, because that's from a place of privilege. We need to educate ourselves as much as we have to educate you and our parishioners, and go from there.
Yeah, and this
we need to show that we're learning so that they can learn. We're not being woke or anything else. It's just we think it's important for us to be able to empathize, not only know the history, but to actually learn how to, or know how to empathize with people of color.
It's funny because I noticed, like, when you record, unless you look straight ahead at the white dot on your, like, when you look down, it looks like you're sleeping. So when you said woke, I looked up and I saw like the beginning of my face, and I'm like, oh look, it looks like I'm waking up right now. I'm woke, everybody. I got woke. Anyway, this is what happens when you spend a year working on Zoom. You fall into technology nerd humor. Just like there are bad dad jokes, there are bad tech jokes too. Okay, to me, this isn't political. People think it's political because it gets talked about by our politicians. And so, yes, to a degree, it is political. In fact, it's outright political. I'll say that. What I mean by it's not political is it's not partisan for me. This isn't a partisan issue. Yes, I understand that different parties have different sides. I'm not approaching this from either party. What I'm approaching this from is the Gospels. Okay, what did Jesus do? How did Jesus teach? How did he command his disciples? What did he command them to do? Did he make exceptions to those, or was he clear? We ask all of those questions, and you get to an answer that is biblically sound, one would hope, right? Like, so, would Jesus want to keep people uneducated and ignorant so that they don't know the oppression that is being caused against other people? No, I don't think that Jesus would be cool with that kind of deception. I think that's a pretty clear, simple question and answer. So I think that's why it's important for us to talk about this. It's not about whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or what candidate you do or don't support. What it is about is taking your politics and putting them through the refining fire of the Bible and of Jesus Christ and seeing what remains at the end, and then voting on your conscience. I would never tell somebody who to vote for or what to vote or not vote, but I will question the things we're voting on. And I think it's important for us to look at how these things will affect people, and have a discussion about that. And then, at the end, if you think that this is all bogus and that God believes something differently, that's where you're at. We can't force people to believe what you can't, we can't force people to believe anything, but we can point you to the Bible and say, that's great that you believe that, but the Bible says, and we do that cautiously. We don't overuse the Bible says, I don't think, but what the Bible does say.
There was the Bible clearly says, we have I remember reading a statement, and I liked the idea, and I still use it as an example. But when our polity changed around the issue of same-sex marriage, the phrasing of how they changed the polity to allow for basically giving pastors if their conscience tells them not to do it, they don't have to do it. They're not being forced to do it by the church down.
Right.
But it was Jesus is the Lord of our conscience. So that's how they framed it, so that if your conscience is telling you that this is not of something I can do, Jesus is the Lord of your conscience, and he's the only one your conscience is responsible to. So
yeah,
and essentially your conscience is going to want you to do the right thing.
Oh yeah, and you and I both have.
If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense, and you and I both have had this discussion. I think that's the graceful. I know that there are people on both extremes, people who want like everybody to accept all LGBTQ gay, A plus whatever, and yeah, I want everybody to be accepted too, but we know that that's going to require 100% of all people in the world to agree on that, and there isn't ever been a time in human history where all 100% of humans agreed on something. I maybe I'm wrong, but I'd be very shocked to find ever such a moment. So it's a matter of not forcing. Not going out with the agenda of forcing people to believe what I want them to believe, but for them to legitly, like, introspectively search within themselves in light of the Bible, in light of Scripture, in light of their experience, and operate that way. As long as you're not crushing or stamping on the doctrines, the essentials, I think the more graceful you live, the better off we are.
That's a reform thing, isn't it? In unity. Anyway, I was going to say you sounded very reformed just then.
Yeah, it's been attributed to just about every leader this side of Pope Leo and onward. But yes, where it says in the essentials unity, in the non-essentials liberty, but in all things charity. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, Sal, but one of the things that I believe is that people don't realize how complex and wide of a scope racism and racial equality and equity, how large of a scope that is, because we just think of it so binary, right? Like as if it's a computer program made up of zeros and ones. 00111000111 and black or white, right? And so we think, well, we kidnapped people, we brought them to a land that they didn't belong in, we enslaved them, but eventually we let them go and made them citizens and let them have a civil rights party at the Lincoln Memorial, and we eventually did what we should have done, and so let's just move on from it, right? Like, isn't that kind of like the attitude? Let us just move on from something that honestly it's not ended, it's never ended. And so one of the things that people don't realize is it's not just that people were brought here, they were enslaved, and then we eventually did the right thing and let them go, and we should just move on from it. Because what does let them go mean? Well, it meant you're no longer owned, so have fun finding your own property. Oh, by the way, you're not welcome here, you're not welcome there, you're not welcome there, you're not welcome there. You're not welcome there. Oh, you see where that sewage pit is over down there? You can put your house somewhere down on that side of things. And yeah, I mean, what opportunities do you have in that situation, Sal?
Yeah, you have none to limited opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. So when we talk about systematic racism, we call it systematic because it's in the system. It's so widespread, and we don't even realize how ingrained it is. Just because of, at the very least, what color our skin was when we were born, we had those advantages or disadvantages. We didn't think about it because we had the advantages. So
yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. And I think that kind of gets into when we talk about how it's broken up in medicine. It's and even the science and the people who look at how our medical system works will tell you that there's an increased rate of when women have babies, and there's a higher risk of the mother not surviving the infant, the maternal immortality.
Yep.
That's much higher in women of color. It's and it's because they, when a white woman says they are in pain, they believe it, and they say, well, you're in this amount of pain, here's some pain medicine. But when they ask African Americans the same question, they don't believe when they say whether or not they're in pain, or so they don't get the same amount of medicine, they don't get the same amount of pain relievers, the list goes on. So inherently in our medical system, it is biased toward better care for white people.
Yeah. Basically. And of course, back when there was the Reconstruction, and back when after the Emancipation and after the 13th Amendment and after all of that, it was, you had, depending on where you lived, depended on what kind of healthcare you got, right? I think by and large, the doctors that existed in that time period did house calls. And so if you were to be experiencing racism in terms of healthcare in that time period, it was probably far more on a personal level, like, oh, Dr. Lawson, will you come and do will you come and see my mammy? She's dying and she needs somebody to give her something to take away the pain, Well, does Dr. Lawson come to the house of somebody who's of a different color, or does he not? Or if he does he provide the same services he would to, say, somebody who? So that is the kind of racism you dealt with in those days. Today, we don't have that. As we became more industrialized, as medical expenses became more expensive, companies, through labor laws and stuff like that, had to provide, if you worked a certain amount, the companies had to provide benefits so that you were getting medical coverage in essence through your company. When you're a black person growing up in a neighborhood that has 0 to less than 0 job opportunities outside of the black market, how do you get healthcare in an industrialized world? How do you get? So your doctor may now your doctor himself may not be racist like your doctor back in the late 1800s could have been. Your doctor may not be racist in that sense, but the system prevents you from seeing that doctor. So the system itself is racist, and the system always has been. It's just that it's more pernicious today, I think, because it's hidden. Like it looks like we've made great progress, but we haven't.
Right, it's just below the surface.
Yeah.
Just knowing that working in healthcare and having gone from working in a hospital in the city in a minority neighborhood to working at a senior center for mostly white people. So going from a very diverse population to a pretty white population. My healthcare experience has shifted. And when I was reframed to the idea of, oh yeah, most of the women who had troubled pregnancies or lost babies or X, Y, or Z that I dealt with at the hospital were primarily black and brown women. The women that I dealt with that were white had, for the most part, had healthy and safe and non-painful, as non-painful as that can be.
Yeah,
delivery and healthy baby. So, I had to be reframed to that when I heard the news story on the radio about it. Just kind of reframed, like, oh yeah, my perception of healthcare changed based on where I was doing ministry. So,
and I think that people don't realize how. We often think, like, right now we're in a time where it seems like everybody in the GOP is hopping down the QAnon racist white nationalist rabbit hole. So it would be a mistake for us today to think like, oh, well, it's always been the GOP, because it hasn't. The Democrats were once big supporters of eugenics. So like you look at like socialized medicine. And socialized medicine, with the exception of FDR, because it hit at a different scale at that point, but like socialized medicine crept up with the understanding that we need to help the people who can't help themselves. And in that day and age, it was predominantly seen as being the stereotypical black person. We need to help the black person, get ahead. And so, for instance, take Planned Parenthood. a dirty little secret about Planned Parenthood is the founder of Planned Parenthood was an advocate for eugenics. And when they were talking about planned parenting, do you think that was directed toward white kids having babies? Of course not. So initially this idea of we need to curb the spread of the spread of inferior races. I mean, that's, like these things have that unfortunate seedy history that we have to be aware of. And while it's shifted so that now we can't deny people healthcare because they're Black, we can't do it this way. That doesn't mean that we can't creep that in some other way. I mean, like I think we see the history of this really kind of ebbing and flowing and evolving and growing. So, but it's horrifying.
Yeah, and it's to see the big picture. You realize how much it's incremental.
Yeah,
changes.
Right.
Like you said, ebbing and flowing. It's we elected our first Black president, and we just elected our very first woman of color vice president.
Yep.
Yep. I like that Obama said once when he was asked that, it wasn't his. He always said if he could just move the needle a little bit into Washington, he did his job as president.
Yeah.
It wasn't to like swoosh it over to one side. It was just to make one little bit of progress. So,
you go big with the hopes that you move small. Because moving small is better than not moving at all. And you see Biden doing that too. Like, I'm gonna go big, and I'm gonna jam it through and make it happen unless you want to work on it. And then that hopefully encourages people to come back with something that is worth negotiating over. That's the idea anyway. How successful the government's been at that is it's a different story. But yeah, the fact of the matter is that yes, there are white people. My parents, even, like my mom only ever had insurance through my dad and his job. So once he lost his job, he was covered under his insurance for a certain amount of time, Cobra or whatever, as a part of his severance package. But once that was that. And that left my mom with the zero insurance coverage, and my dad covered with the VA. So my dad had insurance coverage. Plus he was, he eventually became of the age for, being a senior and getting, Medicare. But the point is like, yeah, it's not just racial. People do like suffer, no matter what their ethnicity is, when it comes to our healthcare. But by and large, it affects the people of color. It affects Black people. It affects Hispanics, Latinos. It affects immigrants, even Eastern European immigrants, in ways that most people are unaware of. Most people don't give thought to. So it's an important aspect of our country and our society that really needs looking at and changing in order to make this a more socially and racially just country. Well, you're in healthcare, so let me ask this question, Sal, if you can answer. I don't want to put you in hot water. I don't want to put you in a kettle of hot water. But go ahead.
As I always say when people ask as I always say when somebody says I have a question, I say, well, I might or might not have an answer.
That's right. So the question is this. Obviously you've spoke about your time being at a continuing care retirement community. Now you're in a different situation where you're dealing with people end of life. Are you finding it where you are serving to still be very little diversity?
Yeah. Having been in that white rice, very homogenous environment, coming out of that and into a healthcare setting that is closer, not totally closer, but closer to how I started working in CPE in the city, in a really diverse population. I'm re-acknowledging some of not only my own biases in care, but also what are built into the system. I have, in terms of people of color, I have more patients who are Black or brown or Asian than I did in 7 years at the senior living facility.
Well, that's a shock. Yeah. Would you say that the majority of the people that you have served so far, granted you've only been doing this for months, would you say the majority of them have been white, Caucasian, or would you say it's been balanced?
It's probably been about 3/4, so it's getting more balanced. But
so 3/4 white and 1/4
and
not.
Oh no, yeah. And that's because I'm still covering a portion of the state that has those pockets of diversity, but not many. So
wonder what part of the state that is. So yeah, I was wondering that because I wonder. Now it could be that the area in which you're serving just tends to be more white, and so that's who you're dealing with. But I wonder if even in hospice care, if there's any studies out there that state that white people have more access to, say, hospice than somebody who is not white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know there's literature when dealing with hospice, and let's say culturally, white people are more attuned to use hospice because we're more likely to say, "Oh, have routine access to a doctor." So, doctor might be able to sit down and talk with the patient, say, "Well, here's what it is, what's going to happen in the next 6 months or whatever the time frame is," and so then they have access to that knowledge. And I'm being very broad and broad strokes here, but they have the ability to make better educated choices based on their privilege. Whereas in other the African American culture, Asian culture, there's a hesitancy to do care because whether it's getting in the way of God or whatever reason, there's a hesitancy culturally because it might seem like a failure, or you haven't finished, with that person. So there's African American, Asian cultures. There's that hesitancy. So that's one of the things that we always struggle with in hospice is getting those patients to know, and it almost comes, I don't want to say colonizing, but it comes off as like, well, here, we're the white people. We know it's good for you. Let us give it to you.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, that definitely. So obviously, then if we're restricting people's, so if we're supporting people who want to further restrict access to healthcare, we have to understand that we're not only hurting those people that we don't know. We're hurting people we do know. And that became very clear to me when it affected my mom, when it was going to affect my sister possibly. Now she has insurance through her job, but God forbid her health declined and she couldn't, that she would have to benefit from something like, what became known as Obamacare. So like, to me, like, oh, go ahead.
Well, that speaks to the idea that, not only then does that racism affect the actual health care that they receive, but then it creeps into the financial because, dang it, these hospitals want to make a profit, and now I'm stuck with a bill. Or it seeps into the financial, like, disproportionately. The poorer you are, the more expensive it is to live.
Oh, without doubt, yeah.
No. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So that's why it's important for people who want to get rid of Planned Parenthood, or people that want to get rid of this social thing, or people that want to get rid of that social thing. They want to get rid of it because it has no effect on them, so they think. But actually, it does overall have. When you get rid of people, aiding people getting the help they need, you end up with even bigger medical bills that end up getting still footed by people through taxes, because you got to pay for it somehow. So this irony of like, well, we're going to get rid of things that help women maintain healthy pregnancies and not get uber sick or die unnecessarily. You want that, right? Like, you don't like, I've never understood how people can think like that isn't benefiting the whole, and yet they will sell it that way. But we need to be aware of that, and we need to recognize that when you think it doesn't affect you, think again, because it does affect you. It does affect you. I mean, well, we're gonna end it right there because we've got more to give you the next time in our July episode. So thank you for tuning in and listening to the episode for this month, for the month of June, and listen to us and where we pick up in our conversation for the July episode. In the meantime, friends, remember you can check out the episode notes. You can definitely click on the links to the different things that we mentioned that we were drinking, and then of course we look forward to seeing you the next time, as always. But remember, be excellent to each other, and don't be a jerk. Okay? Rock on.